Hello again, YouTube. This is Jonas Welsh, or Dr. Jonas Welsh, also known as At11 inside of City of Heroes. And this is the second part of my video looking at my main character in the game, 11. The first video, like I say, was mostly just to look at how I got into City of Heroes in the first place. What will happen with this one is we'll be looking at mostly game, essentially the setup of the Scrapper Archtype that I chose. When I first started the game, like I say in the first video, I was actually on the Defiant server. Didn't particularly. I mean, I just picked whatever the first one was on the list. I did have the intention at some point I might have actually getting into the role-playing scene, and Union was seen as the unofficial role-playing server, but at the time it was a case of I just thought, well, I'll just, go whatever's first one really, and then just went from there really. So, but when I started, I made the character as a blaster. So, just a quick overview on the archetypes, essentially, in the City of. You had traditionally hero and villain archetypes, and those were essentially blurred when we had City of Heroes going rogue, which was one of the paid expansion packs a couple of years ago, where allowed for alignment change. So traditional hero characters could realign themselves to be a vigilante, and then eventually a rogue and a villain, and can go to either side, and vice versa. So a villain could essentially be a hero, and you would have traditional villain archetypes appear there. When the game went to free to play and became City of Heroes Freedom last year, then that line was blurred even further, to the point where essentially you created a character in a single tutorial. They used to split the tutorials between City of Heroes and City of Villains. They were separate entities, and with Freedom they decided that they were just going to say, screw it, you can just pick any archetype you want and they can go any side you want. But originally on Defiant I picked Blaster, and the Blaster concept is that they go for extreme range, heavy AoE damage output, but actually have no defense or damage resistance whatsoever. So glass cannons, essentially. And completely the antithesis of the concept of 11. Actually, he's meant to be, I mean, he's not like super strong or anything, but he's supposed to be able to take a beating, obviously. But I was just so determined to aim for a character that would be able to throw fire, essentially, because Mortal Kombat character, martial arts is one thing, but they also usually fire off some form of projectile. So I thought I would be able to get away with making a blaster that would throw a lot of fire while still having a few fighting powers, which unfortunately all I could find was the fighting pool, which meant a simple punch, a simple kick, and that was pretty much it. Not very martial arty, but once I've started something, I tend to try and stick it through for a long time. I'm a sucker for doing that, really. So for the first 9 months of playing the game, I was on Defiant and played this character as a blaster. Fire blaster it was. At the time, you couldn't customize the look as you could do towards the end of the game's existence. Power customization was brought in about 2 years ago, I think it was now. I can't remember the issue numbers off the top of my head as to what came what. I'm sure someone else would be able to point them out. But at the time, obviously, there wasn't any power customization, so you were limited to making, choosing fire, and then that was pretty much it. Whatever it looked like, that was it. You had to stick by that. So I got a very stiff education in how to play City of Heroes with a blaster, because you really can't, muck around with that, because if you don't know how to play a blaster properly, and know what to hit, when to hit it, and how to remain inconspicuous despite the fact that you're causing a massive amount of damage to a large number of enemies, you will be put down quickly. And it was a very harsh lesson. in how to play the game. Now, I got the character to 50. A couple of double XP weekends helped me get there. Initially, the game's XP curve was, I wouldn't say vicious, but you know, it did take a rather long time to actually get the character to 50. And after a particular double XP weekend, I actually managed to get the character to 50, and that was that. But shortly after that, I actually took a break from City of to do other things, to try other games and whatnot. And when I came back to it a couple of months later, the super group I was with on Defiance, which was a group called the Legion Supreme, kind of disbanded, or at least it died the death. They were a nice little group. Them it was led by I forget his global name actually now, but his main character was Power Lord, and it was pretty much a Superman knockoff. Went for the super strength and vulnerability tanker, and you know, he and everyone else in the you know, introduced me to, you know, the concepts of the game and what to do properly, and you know, sort of like etiquette in the game as well, and whatnot. But the group seemed to kind of disappeared when I came back, essentially, so I didn't really have anything to really do. You know, it's essentially was a case of, oh well, there's nobody around, what do I do? And I kind of wanted to try out the RP scene as well, and just see if I could, like, you know, how well the character concept, because now I had the character created, okay, so how well is it actually going to go down, you know, played out in a few scenarios. But obviously the only way to do that was to join the quote-unquote unofficial RP server, that was Union. So went ahead and remade the character from scratch, as the one in the first video, which was martial arts super reflexes, because really speaking, if I was going to go for something that was based in Mortal Kombat, the martial arts mattered more. So put up with not having the fireball throwing at the time. Of course, you saw in the video he was throwing fireballs quite liberally. They were eventually, you know, brought in for Scrappers at some point. But yeah, remade the character, and spent the time, you know, getting him to 50 and whatnot. And then from there borned the rest of my characters and all the concepts of the Dunelm group, super group that I made, where all my heroes reside. And then I think about a year or so ago, thought, well, okay, I've got the character to 50 and I've used the IO system and this, that and the other. But yeah, I kind of also like the character to have some form of weapon as well, because, you know, I always had the concept of he would fight with predominantly hands and fists, but would have a blade for extreme methods. And actually, I'll just finish off this fight because I've also got a secondary costume for something else that I was went for the gimmick. I know sometimes it's laughed at, but I always thought I could make it work for the blade to essentially, you know, he could put the thing on fire using his fire-based powers as well. So I think I can just quickly change the character costume, like so. And now we've got a fiery sword. Yeah, blue fire is important. Yes, actually, I mean, I actually managed to transfer the original blaster from Defiant to Union when server transfers were made available, just so that I had the original, you know, 5011. He's been since deleted, of course, because, you know, the Scrapper versions were, you know, far superior, and I just didn't play the blaster anymore. But at least when the power customization came out, I could at least make the fire blue, which is what I always envisioned to do. Issue 24 was going to allow me the ability to change the fire to be blue for the ancillary pill for the Scrappers, but obviously that's not coming out now, so boo-hoo. I could at least, you know, make the fire sword blue, and the big incarnate fireball from the first video, that was able to be colour blue and whatnot. But yeah, the idea of Scrappers, and it is my favourite archetype essentially, is that they're mostly based for single target. There's very limited access to AoE powers like the fireball there, and the big swinging AoE whirring smash and whatnot as well. The idea behind them is that they do extreme single target damage, they do critical hits. they've got a chance to do critical hit for, you know, more damage. And their survivability is decent. It's not amazing, like in the sense of the tanker, which is obviously the main survivable archetype, or to an extent maybe even the brutes, which we'll get to later. But they can, you know, last in the fight. I mean, you can see this is an army of mobs and surviving pretty well. You know, his health's not really ever getting to a dangerous spot at any point. So yeah, Scrapper's just a. I've got a lot of Scrappers in this game. Most of my archetype characters are Scrappers, because they seem to put a lot of the martial art based powers and weapon based powers in that archetype. And it was just the concept of just getting into a fight and being on the edge of, well, I can, you know, basically put them down before they put me down. Just really nice player type for me. I do like my tankers and brutes and whatnot, which you'll see a lot of as well. But yeah, the Scrapper, the whole idea of the Scrapper is get in the fight, do you know, as much damage to a single target as possible. You know, mow down the minions quickly and the lieutenants, and they were known as the boss killers essentially, the Scrappers. Because obviously there was actually better chance of critical damage based on the level of the enemy. So if there were a boss compared to a lieutenant, and there were also 1 or 2 levels higher than you, there was a greater chance of critical hit. So yeah, they were, you know, very popular to have just to try and, you know, cut people down very quickly. So yeah. But yeah, I decided I was going to have a one that was broadsword as well. So I had my main, which was the martial arts for, you know, most situations, and then this broadsword version was just, you know, for times where I felt I wanted to swing a sword instead and just cut people down indiscriminately. So yeah. So there's one other version of 11 which at some point I'll get to, but he was villain side, which is the Scrapper Archtype. But yeah, this is essentially you know, an overview of what 11 was to me as a concept before I had City of Heroes, and when I came into City Heroes, and yeah, was running for the longest time with 2 versions of him as a Scrapper. Martial Arts was the first one. And Broadsword the second, both with super reflexes. I'll probably break down the various like sort of shield types, defense types that they refer to in subsequent videos with other characters. The idea though of super reflexes was that defense is king. Defense was whether you get hit or not. Damage resistance was you will get hit, just a case of how well do you soak up the damage. Defense is they have to hit you first. And super reflexes was very easy to get to defense cap to the point where they would barely ever hit you. So very living on the edge, because if they do hit you, then it will hurt essentially, because they've got no damage resistance as a result. So I think this is the last mob, and then we'll be done. I think just in time before my 15 minutes is up. So yeah, I might still do some more videos of 11 if I find an avenue to do so, but probably not. I'll be moving on to the characters and then go from there. But yeah, really enjoyed being able to play as this concept character that I've had for years, and will be sorely missed, like I say, with it shutting down. So I think we've got a runner. Yeah, we'll pick him up from a distance, I think. There we go. So, right, I think that'll be the 15. But for now, this is Jonas Welsh, otherwise known as At11, signing off, and be seeing you soon.